This episode is dropping on July 31st, which is a really special day. What is it? Have you ever heard of it? Today is National Orgasm Day, and this episode is going to be all about orgasms. Now, I know you've heard of Mother's Day and Father's Day and various religious holidays and Memorial Day and Labor Day, at least if you live in the United States. Have you heard of actually International Orgasm Day, which is in principle celebrated nationally as well? Well, I want to tell you how it began. This actually really makes me laugh because, the G spot, it's named for a doctor who's a male doctor whose first name starts with G. And so there are lots of women who've made the point that it's just ridiculous to label this according to a male doctor's name. Well, be that as it may, International Orgasm Day actually came about as a result of something that a man did, and I feel really glad to honor him for it. So International Female Orgasm Day was first celebrated in 2007 in Esperantina, Brazil. It was created by the councilman Mateo Dantas when he passed a municipal law establishing the holiday in order to raise awareness for female sexuality and reduce stigma and taboo surrounding it. Can you imagine if we established International Orgasm Day in municipal and state and federal laws as a move towards reducing stigma and taboo related to female sexuality? That would be a remarkable moment in time. Anyway, in addition to all of these reasons, another reason that Councilman Mateo Dantas in Brazil established International Female Orgasm Day was because he was repaying a sexual debt to his wife. I'm kind of curious what the details are, but I don't know that they're available, and it's more fun just kind of playfully imagining how that might have come to be. I guess if your spouse is the councilman, you use the power you have, since so much of what stokes really expansive, enlightened sex involves power dynamics. If you are currently recovering or newly recovering from traumatic experiences, I don't know that focusing on the power dynamics is the most important thing. It's better to focus on safety. But within the context of safety, power dynamics certainly contribute to a lot of intensification and gratification in the sexual realm. So there's a little bit of that in the origins of the International Female Orgasm Day. Now, in general, there is a lot of stigma and a lot of taboo and a lot of misinformation related to female orgasm. However, even with the best of intentions, even with alchemizing shame and being present to pleasure, female orgasms are genuinely quite mysterious. Sometimes they're elusive, sometimes they're not, but they really are mysterious. In fact, I'm going to share a kind of vulnerable story. This makes me laugh. I ever would have imagined sharing this story. But anyway, I was in college. What was I? Maybe 19 years old, probably. And I had a boyfriend. I was a virgin, and I remained a virgin throughout the length of our relationship, although on multiple occasions he thought that was going to change. That wasn't something that I really ever considered. So we had some pretty rich sensual experiences, and there was one where I had pajamas on. Like I had shorty pajamas on, like a top that was short sleeves and like shorts, but I was definitely not naked. And we had an experience. Actually, he was away. He had taken a semester off and surprised me showing up because our relationship was long distance for a while. Anyway, he surprised me and showed up, and it was this really tender, loving, sexy time. And it was beautiful. And I had sensations that I really enjoyed. It was definitely not the first time that I had those sensations. I just knew it was this wonderful thing that I felt when things were steamy and intentional and fun. And the next day, he showed me a poem that he had written. He went home to where he was staying and must have written this poem, and I don't have the poem anymore. I don't remember any of the lines. It was probably about 16 or 20 lines long, but one of the lines in this poem was the orgasm's spasm. And the poem was about our time together, reuniting after having been apart. And it was when I read this college boyfriend's poem that he wrote in honor of our time together with this line, the orgasm spasm, that I thought to myself, oh, I had an orgasm. I've been having orgasms and I didn't know it. It just never occurred to me. I didn't even have the question. I wasn't thinking, am I having orgasms? Am I not having orgasms? It just was totally outside my consciousness. And if somebody had ever asked me, not that that would have come up, but if someone had asked me, I would have said, oh no, I haven't had an orgasm yet. But because he wrote this poem and shared it with me the next day, and I knew the moment that he was thinking of, I realized, oh, I have orgasms. Now, I'm somebody whose mother didn't discuss sex with me until I'd already had 2 children. I did not have any formal sex education. I also didn't watch porn. To my knowledge, my stepfather and also my father didn't have Playboy magazines. Like, I really just wasn't exposed to very much at all. And so I was having experiences that definitely were orgasmic and didn't know it. So I share that story because it's kind of fun, and also because it's probably really difficult for a man to imagine not knowing whether or not he's had an orgasm, given the experience of orgasm and ejaculation being fairly definitive, and most people experience them simultaneously and don't experience them independent of one another. Most men. It's actually possible to cultivate all kinds of sexual prowess so that you absolutely can orgasm without ejaculating. That's how multi-orgasmic men have their experiences. That's beyond the scope of this episode, although if you have questions, you can send me a message on social media or through my website, through the contact page, and I'll take your questions and answer them on an upcoming episode. But in any case, the vast majority of men experience orgasm and ejaculation simultaneously. And so it would be difficult to imagine that a woman doesn't know whether or not she's had an orgasm, but it's not rare. I shared my kind of youthful experience, one of my first moments of sexual education that was the beginning of what ultimately has been a very rich, detailed, meandering, and intentional journey to learn a great deal about my sexual experience and sex in general. Anyway, in terms of orgasms, there are multiple classifications. Different people say there are 4 types. Other people say there are 12 types, 3 types. And I'm definitely not going to get into the particularities of how many types. As far as I'm concerned, what matters is whether or not you're having them. If that's something you'd like to do, like to experience, then you really can thoroughly enjoy the pleasure without scrutinizing, oh, was it this kind of orgasm or that kind of orgasm? It's not an important question. However, I do think it's interesting to know that there are many different types of orgasms, including clitoral orgasms, G-spot orgasms, anal orgasms, cervical orgasms, non-tactile orgasms, nipple orgasms, and more. And so the way that orgasms are classified, interestingly, is not based on the actual quality of the experience. It's not based on the duration. It's not based on how gratifying it is. It's based on physiological, anatomical part of a woman, which is being stimulated such that she experiences the orgasm. One of the biggest contributors to how we've thought about orgasm for decades came from the research done by Masters and Johnson in the 1950s. And they studied what I'm going to call male orgasm because it followed the pattern of how men most typically orgasm. And they identified 4 phases which happen in a linear fashion, meaning first phase, then second, then third, then fourth. It's a unidirectional experience. Each phase can last different amounts of time, but once you're in one, the only thing to happen is to stay there or move on to the next. And those phases are excitement. It's when the desire, the pursuit, the whole thing begins, excitement, and then plateau, where the activity is ongoing and sustained and building, to orgasm, where ejaculation happens for a man, to resolution, otherwise known as the refractory period, where everything calms back down, a man's erection is lost, and there's that time of resolution before excitement can begin again. Nowadays, in casual conversation and really in any conversation I'm having with professional colleagues as well, we don't tend to talk about excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. We more often talk about desire, arousal, climax, and the refractory period, where first there's desire and then any of the activities that contribute to arousal, meaning physical response for a woman that's going to involve more secretions, more wetness, more sensation, more sensitivity, more nuance. For a man, that's going to include the erection, although not always, because there's all kinds of sex to be had without an erection. I referred to outer course in a previous episode, but I'm going to stick with the more typical way that we think about it. And then climax would be when the orgasm happens, and then the refractory period. However, even though those are more feminine words, desire, arousal, climax, I don't know that I call that a feminine word, but anyway, a description. I want to share with you the notion that there's masculine orgasm and feminine orgasm. These kinds of orgasms are not restricted to masculine, meaning male bodies, people with male genitalia, and feminine people, women with female genitalia. Masculine orgasm and feminine orgasm, as I'm talking about it with you now, are really energetic descriptors. I mean, they're not just energetic, they're happening physiologically, but they're really qualities of orgasm. And so if you think of masculine orgasm, that, whether we use these words or not, follows the Masters and Johnson model, where things get started, then they are sustained and continue to build and build and build for however long, and then comes climax, orgasm, and then the refractory period. And that is very familiar. And for many couples, for many individuals, men and women, and any other flavor, that is what they aspire to. But in fact, some of the most rich, expansive, erotically vital experiences happen with feminine orgasm. And in feminine orgasm, first of all, it is not unidirectional. For women, we can be aroused right off the bat, like we feel the physiological arousal and soon after have an orgasm, and then sit in arousal for more time. And our orgasm can be a gentle wave coming in, building more and more and more, or it can be literally a super steep asymptotic curve that just goes right to it, or it can go partway and then gradually decline and then build again in multiple waves. Or there can be incredible climax followed by a little bit of a pause, followed by more arousal, followed by kind of just hanging out in a kind of delicious waiting, touching, yummy, and then the waves come again. So if I had a graph that I could show you, I would show you so many different patterns. Whereas Masters and Johnson, the typical masculine orgasm, really follows a very particular shape where excitement builds, then there's the plateau where things are sustained and built, and then there's the very steep rise with orgasm, and then the rapid decline back to baseline for the resolution. Whereas female orgasm, feminine orgasm, it comes in waves. It can look any which way. It can start big and become more gradual and then build back up. It can just be this steady vibration at not a very dramatic pace that goes on and on and on. That also counts as orgasm when the perineal muscles are contracting. It can be super subtle and it can be really dramatic with squirting. And my purpose in sharing all of this is because chances are you haven't heard it before. And if you have, well, it's worth hearing again. And my intention in celebrating International Female Orgasm Day with you in this episode is to invite you to expand what's possible, to take something I've shared and play with it. Maybe you want to try a different kind of orgasm, stimulating somewhere else. Maybe you want to stimulate in a different way. Maybe you just want to let go of the pressure to move in a unidirectional manner towards the orgasm. Maybe you want to enjoy building more slowly in a kind of goalless manner, knowing you might not actually have orgasm, but you will have more sensation, and ultimately that fertilizes your orgasmic potential. There are so many possibilities. And I guess if you're looking for one thing to focus on in your sexual expression, anything I've said already, by all means, take it. And if you're still not sure, or even if you are, focus on deeper, slower breathing. Because for whatever reason, so many of us are conditioned to clench muscles, to tighten, to like pull for that orgasmic experience. And you may even be able to pull for it and have it. But believe me, when you can breathe and relax and open and build following your authentic experience, the kinds of orgasms that you have access to are just extraordinary and worth learning how to experience. So happy International Female Orgasm Day. May you be inspired and may you discover new experiences as you explore your next orgasmic opportunity.